That's why I can do this short introduction to MIDI. So Professor Wang's idea was that MIDI is a good bridge between analysis and synthesis. So let's look more into what MIDI is, because it is a tool that is widely used in recording studios, in music equipment, so we should know about it. What is MIDI? How many of you have heard of MIDI before? Not so many. Not so many. Okay. So let's see exactly what MIDI is. Technically, it is a standard that describes three main components: a protocol, a digital interface, and the connectors. So this is a digital interface that connects MIDI to USB to the PC, and these are the cables with the five pins, round cables that we use to connect MIDI equipment. So what is the purpose of MIDI? Let's see why it was invented. So a little bit of history. In 1970s, when the digital equipment started to appear, they wanted digital synthesizers. But each manufacturer created its own way of linking the input device, which usually was a keyboard, to the, let's say, electronic circuits that produced the sounds, okay? So they had, each had their own, let's say, standard. So if you wanted to have in a recording studio like 3 or more synthesizers, you could not control all of them. You needed 4 separate keyboards and 4 separate players for that matter. So it wasn't feasible enough. You need only one keyboard with 2 hands to be able to control whatever you want. So they wanted this kind of standardization of communication. For that matter, in 1983, the full MIDI 1.0 specification was released. Do you know what version of MIDI is being used today? Of MIDI protocol? Anybody knows? Not quite. It's exactly 1.0. It's one of the oldest protocols that we use in computers because it was greatly designed so that it has support. A lot of things were added on top of it, but it had support in the first place, so we don't need a second version of this. So basically, MIDI is a standardized way of communication between synthesizers, samplers, or whatever musical equipment, okay? Now let's see what data flows through this protocol, okay? If you want to remember only one thing for your lecture and then go home, remember just this. MIDI is not audio. There's great confusion going here. So MIDI does not carry sound, okay? Not digital sound, not any type of sound. It contains only messages. It carries messages. What type of messages? We call them event messages because they're messages produced at certain type of events. Let's see, what kind of events? The start of the note, so I pressed a key on the keyboard, that is an event. I released the key, that is another event. I changed the knob on the keyboard so that I want to change some parameters remotely to that synthesizer. This is another type of event. And some special kind of, come on, don't tell me that you're, okay. Some other controls and configuration messages specifically designed to configure a synthesizer. This is less important. So if MIDI is based only some messages and events, what is a MIDI file? You used MIDI files, right? And you double-clicked on them, and you heard some sound. But what is a MIDI file? It's exactly just that, recording these event messages, timestamping them, and that is all that a MIDI file is. So we can think of a MIDI recording as being an enhanced score, because we have the exact dynamics of the music. We have the pressure that we press on the key is quantified between 0 and 127, so it's even more exact that a score can tell us. Because we have only this like piano, pianissimo, but this does not tell exact, okay? The MIDI specifies it in numbers. Then we have the exact timings of the notes, when the note started, when the note ended. And then we have a lot of other, just wait a second, because one software is bugging my head here. Don't laugh, I'm still using this. Yahoo Messenger, old stuff. So, other information, like the sustained pedal state. The ones who play piano knows what a sustained pedal is, okay? It can sustain the notes. And so the sustained pedal, whenever it changes state from on to off, that is recorded as well. So everything that regards the player, okay, what he presses and what he does is recorded, but not the sound. So a MIDI file does not contain the music. We can think that it contains instructions to play the music. We can say it that way, okay? So if it contains just instructions, when we are in Windows and double click on that stuff, why do we listen to it? Why can we hear some sounds? Well, to be able to listen to a MIDI file, we need a piece of software or hardware that is able to follow these instructions and play that instrument, okay? Whether it's a synthesizer, a sampler, or a virtual instrument, they follow these instructions. Now, let's see what each of them mean. You know what a synthesizer is? The synthesizer generates the sound for a given pitch using an algorithm. So you say, play me the E from the second octave at this intensity, and then it generates the pitch using an algorithm like additive synthesis or subtractive synthesis, whatever they use. This is an example of software synthesizer and a hardware one. Now let's see what a sampler is. A sampler is a more evolved type of thing. It uses a piece of actually recorded audio that can be even, I don't know, a bark from a dog, and you wanted to have it on a scale. So you record that bark of a dog, you know, or a piano key, and then you apply pitch shift for you to be able to play it all across the keyboard, okay? And then to simulate, let's say, the intensity, the velocity that you press with the key, just adjust the volume. So that is not quite a realistic sound, but it's better than trying to synthesize. If you record, for example, a piano key, it's much better to use a sampler than to try to synthesize a piano key because it doesn't work as good. This is an example of a software sampler and hardware sampler. Well, the hardware ones are not quite really used now. Now, virtual instruments, here lies the secret of MIDI, because virtual instruments use actually pre-recorded notes from real instruments. So you take a violin player and you say, play me all the notes at different intensities. You record all these, okay? You splice them up into WAV files, and then you just trigger. So with the keyboard, you say, play me the E note at that intensity. Then you go search for the WAV file of the actual recording and play that. So it sounds very realistic. This is an example of a very good drum virtual instrument, software one. And this is a drum module. For electronic drums, you connect the electronic drums to this thing, and the electronic drums do just that. They trigger these sounds. And all these sounds are stored here in a memory, okay? And you have different type of effects to add or different types of sounds. Good. So we've talked about the fact that MIDI is about messages, and to listen to it, we need this kind of synthesizer or sampler or whatever, okay? Let's look a little bit of what message types are exchanged over MIDI. Now, I warn you, you don't need to remember any of this. It's just for you to understand how MIDI works. You don't need to remember the names. Please don't write them on a paper because it's really boring. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So the most important type of message is called channel voice message. This is the type of the message that contains all the notes flowing and all the thing that has to do with music playing. Okay, so we will talk about that in detail, and then I will just point the other ones out. Why is it called channel? Well, MIDI supports 16 independent channels. So you can send notes to different channels. What is that used for? You can control 16 different synthesizers. You can send notes to one, then you change the channel, send to another one, okay? So let's see a use case for that. If we have a keyboard, we can output the MIDI data, okay, so what notes we play. We can output that to one channel. We can output it to all the channels, or better, if you have a more expensive keyboard, we can split it up. For example, what we play with the left hand can go on channel 2. What we play with the right hand goes to channel 3. Now on channel 2 we'll have a bass synthesizer, on channel 3 we'll have piano synthesizer, so we play two instruments at once, okay? And for the other part, sound module. Now I will use sound module. This is like synthesizer or sampler or virtual instruments or whatever produces sound, okay? The sound modules can be set to listen to one channel or all the channels if we want. So it's quite flexible. We just need to address each synthesizer the correct way, the correct channel. So let's see what type of messages we have in this. What messages we have in this type. When a key is pressed, note on event occurs. So we need to inform that synthesizer with a couple of things: a channel number, so that the synthesizer know that it is for him or for anybody else. Then the note value. The note value is represented in a number. The number of the semitone is encoded, okay? Now the middle C on the piano is 60, C sharp is 61, And if you still remember for the last lecture, you know the octave has 12 semitones, so if we add 60 to 12, we get the next octave of C, which is 72. So we encode all these octaves in numbers. And then we send the velocity, or how hard the key was pressed. So encoded between 0 and 127 as well. Now this is just for the geeky ones who want to know exactly the byte order. So here we have a constant code, which is for note on 1001. Then we send the channel number, so 4 bits, then the note value and the velocity value. Another type, when we release the key, a note off event occurs. It contains the same thing, though the velocity is not quite used in synthesizer. You cannot model too much when you lift a key, okay? You don't have like sounds producing too much. But for example, for a bass player, when you lift your thumb of the string, there is a noise, so you can use that to model. But a wide variety does not ignores this information. So this is the same, just that the code changes from 1000. This is just for geeks. Okay. Now, have you noticed on some keyboards there are these little wheels here that somebody uses when they play a solo? Okay, they're called pitch bend wheels. And they can be used to go in between the pitches. So if you want in between C and C sharp, you can go with this wheel. So whenever we change the position of that wheel, an event occurs. The event is called pitch bend change. So we need to know what channel, what synthesizer we want that pitch to bend, and the new pitch bend value. Now this is encoded at 14 bits, which gives us a very fine control. Okay, we have like 16,000 possible values. So it's a very fine control. Now, other keyboards have different type of knobs, okay, like this one, that have no labels or anything. They can be assigned to do something. Now, whenever we change a control change event occurs. So we inform that synthesizer that we changed a control. Now, we need to send, of course, the channel number to know what synthesizer, the control number. This is how we deal with the synthesizer. So we say, I will send you on control 60 the volume control. And now you set up the synthesizer to listen for the control 60, and it will change the volume when you change the control. Does that make sense? I mean, it's simple enough, right? And of course, the new control value. Now, this is not so fine as the pitch bend. We have only 127 values. If you work with some very fine effects that need very fine adjustments, it does not work quite well, but it's a great feature to have. So this is kind of important. And finally, we may want the sound to change. Okay, we want to change we use the same hardware, but we want to change its sound. So we can send a program change event through some buttons with some numbers that we can select. This is called a patch. So we will send the channel number of the synthesizer we want to change the sound and the new patch number. Patch means like type of sound, let's say, okay? So we are limited to use just 127 patches per, in fact, there are 128 if I learn again to number. Okay, so these were like the most important MIDI messages in that type, okay? Now forget about them. So hopefully you understood what they're all about. Do not remember names or anything. So let's see other types of message. Channel mode messages. This is used to configure the behavior of the channel. It has to do with polyphonic versus monophonic, okay? This is not really used. System common messages. Now this can be used, each manufacturer that implements MIDI can define their own type of messages for some particular configuration that you can use. And also special controls like play or stop button. If you use a MIDI recorder and all the synthesizers need to play at the same time, that play and stop button are sent through this type of message. And also we have system real-time messages. If we use multiple recorders, we need to synchronize them with a clock that goes through this type of message, okay? Now, I told you not to remember this stuff. This is a link where you can check if you're like a MIDI geek and you want to find out more, you can check this site and you will have a brief description of everything. So let's see how we connect things up. Is it getting too complicated? Too many message types? Okay, let's forget about the messages and see how we connect these things. Now, most MIDI gear have these 3 ports, but cheaper ones do not have the through one. Now let's see what each of these are for. MIDI out. You guessed it, all the MIDI data that is produced by that equipment goes on the out port. It's like common sense. MIDI in. That's where the MIDI equipment listens for incoming MIDI. Okay? And then we have MIDI through, which is just a copy of what that equipment receives on MIDI in. That is used for you to be able to chain multiple synthesizers, so you don't need to connect all of these to one keyboard through multiple MIDI out ports. You just put one cable from one to another. Okay? This is called daisy chaining. Again, for soldering geeks now. Yeah, we have 5 pins, but it's a digital serial thing, so we need only 2 pins, in fact, 5 and 4. 2 is the shield of the cable, so that does not matter. It's a perfectly symmetric, it's very easy to make these cables. Good, so this is a usage system. I hope you like this resolution. It's like a prehistoric. I didn't have any better. So the signal flow is like that. The keyboard produces the MIDI events. Okay, I press the E key, I press the C key, and so on. We go from the MIDI out of this keyboard to the MIDI in of the adapter of the computer. Usually it's a USB adapter. That's what I'm using here. So we have, oh, it's a little bit short. This little guy right here does all the job of converting. These 2 are MIDI out and MIDI in for that adapter. And here on this side I have a USB port that I plugged into my computer. So then we can get from the MIDI out of the computer. In computer we process them, we edit, okay? Then we get them out and we plug it in the MIDI in port of the first synthesizer that we want to use. Then we go from the MIDI through to another. Then we go to the MIDI through to another. Now we set these to different channels, okay? And then we can control them. We can play the sounds. Now obviously I didn't show you the audio signal path because it was too cluttered. Then we go from the audio outputs from all of these to the speakers to listen to the music or to record it back into the computer. Okay? So this is a typical usage scenario, but nowadays hardware synthesizers are, let's say, less used in like cheaper studios. They're all virtual, so everything now happens inside the computer. So we just need the keyboard and the computer, and we can compose songs. Now, a couple of things about the transmission protocol. This is, again, very geeky stuff. It's a unidirectional asynchronous bit stream. Transmission rate is only 31 kilobits per second. Can you believe that? Do you remember dial-up connections? I mean, this is very slow for these days. And the data is transmitted, so each byte is preceded by a start bit and an 8-bit, stop bit, sorry. Now, because the transmission rate is very slow, if we have a lot of messages, it may choke, okay? It's called MIDI choking. Now, this happens, for example, when a lot of control data means the knobs, because whenever you turn a knob, when you're continuously turning, messages are continuously generated. So now I have a new position, new position, new position, okay? So you have this series of events. Now, if you do that to a lot of knobs, it will eventually choke. So how can we prevent that? 'Cause we want music to keep playing, okay? When we turn a knob, we are not interested in the intermediate parts. So we can filter that events out. We can say that the notes are more, have a greater priority than the knobs. Does that make sense? So if we have a lot of messages, we will let the notes pass and maybe cancel out some of the control parts. So that is a workaround. But it's a rare thing because I don't think there's a lot of control, especially when you use computers and you have like exact steps. You know, you don't need to continuously turn or something. So yeah, but this may happen and this is like a limitation. So let's see some pros and cons of using MIDI. File sizes are smaller, right? Because we have only the instructions to play the music. We have only what it needs to be played and no audio data. We have no background noise. You can record MIDI on the keyboard wherever you want. In an airport, it doesn't matter. You have no noise. You have separated instrument tracks. That's a beautiful thing to have. Now let's see what are the cons. Well, requires real-time conversion to sound. So we need to process these instructions, okay? That may induce latency. So if you want MIDI to play in real time and you don't have a powerful enough computer, you will end up listening to your sounds later, and that is very frustrating, pressing a key now and then hearing the piano key later, okay? Sound quality is inconsistent. It depends on the playback devices. It depends on who follows your MIDI instructions. Now, I think I forgot to say that when we got to the synthesizers. I asked you how we can listen to MIDI files in Windows. Well, Windows provides us with what is called Microsoft GS Wavetable Synth. That is a synthesizer that can do a lot of instruments. Let's listen to, I mean, you have listened to this, but let's say a Pharrell Williams, okay, happy MIDI file. This is all that Microsoft can do, okay? Well, in terms of synthesizing. So the drums are not realistic, the voice or whatever voice modeling has nothing to do. But still, the size of this file is, let's see, it should be very small. 82 kilobytes. Oh, that's pretty small. Okay, now when using MIDI to record, you need a little bit more knowledge in music theory because you're dealing with notes and stuff like that. So in audio recording, you just plug in your instrument, hit record, just play there and it will be reproduced, okay? But you need a little bit more knowledge. So this may be considered as a con. Oh, so we're approaching the end. Let's see what applications are for MIDI. Have you ever seen this kind of thing? It's called a keyboard. That it plays a lot of sounds. How can it do that? Well, it's a sub-MIDI system. This is the MIDI producing part, and this is the synthesizing part. That is all that keyboards are, really. So they internally use MIDI, and they output the data as well through some ports. For example, this, which is 12 years old, Professor, right? This is 12 years old, and it still has these MIDI outputs. So, another application is electronic drums. Have you ever wondered how electronic drums actually function? They're just pressure sensor. So you beat on them, they sense the pressure. So how do we get the sound? Well, it's a MIDI mapping. It sounds kind of weird and dumb, but it's a very clever workaround. The bass drum is a C note. The snare drum is a D note. That's the mapping. So when this guy here, the drum module, senses that it received the C note, it will play the bass drum. Now, of course, we can simulate that with a keyboard. We can plug a keyboard there and play drums because we just play on the C note, okay? So all of these drums have their own mappings. That's how electronic drums work. Now the important part. If we record a performance in MIDI, and pay attention because a lot of your music that you're listening to is that way recorded, because we can easily correct wrong notes. We just change the event or just change the note if you play the wrong note, so you can have a very stupid player. You can change the duration of notes if you find some imperfections. Instead of cutting the audio, it's way better to cut just the event. You will get a more natural sound from the virtual instrument. You can correct the timing of the notes. If you're not completely on the beat, you just move notes there and you're already a great player. And you can change the tempo of the performance. If you're not able to do like fast solos on the keyboard, you can record note by note and then put it up to speed, and the sound will be natural. It's not like the cassette tape thing, like the pitch shifting type of tempo changing. And let's say a consequence of this, or better said, is like we can do that for audio that we already recorded. It's not really possible now, but it's a hot research topic. Automatic transcription, so transforming from audio into MIDI. That would be a really useful tool. I really hope you guys are interested in that and develop something for me. Now, MIDI is very useful for composers. You can use a lot of virtual instruments, okay, orchestra instruments. You don't have to call the guys, you don't have to pay them, they don't have to agree to be at a certain time at the studios. That is way easy. And you can listen to the end product already. And producing music with virtual instruments, of course, is cheaper, and the sound quality is not that bad. Now, believe me, if you listen to like if you watch movies, a lot of the soundscapes there are recorded with virtual instruments. Those violins and stuff, very expensive to hire an orchestra of 40 people and all agreeing on the same time to come to the studio, reading your music, they're very expensive. So you pay like $200 for the best like string virtual instrument, then you MIDI program this stuff, and it plays and it sounds very awesome. It sounds like real orchestra. And another important application is that you can directly record a music score. Well, that is pretty simple. I mean, you just know where the beat is, then you put the notes on the score, so you convert from MIDI to score. It's very easy and very useful. And now this is like I don't know how to define that, but I would like to see that. You can analyze, we have all these details, so the exact pressure, we have the exact timing, so you can analyze the performance style, Have you ever listened to a classical piano song that you like, let's say, I don't know, Chopin or whatever you listen to, and some guy plays it, some guy plays it, and then another guy plays it, and it sounds a little bit different. Now, how can we quantify this difference? It's an interesting research problem, so we can analyze the performance much better than from audio, because it's very hard to define the exact pressure and what the performer does. Okay, now before we let's get now into the questions so that you don't forget anything. Please ask me whatever you want about MIDI, and then I'll try to make a short demo. I still have a little bit of time. Do you have any questions on these topics that we have talked about? Who understood what MIDI is? Not too many, so okay. Can we try that once more? I'm not convinced that just 2 people have understood this. So, no questions here. Once, twice, sold. Okay, so let's see. I have a setup here. Now, this keyboard oh, yeah, I love it. I simply love it. Okay. Yeah, it will be good to do that. A couple of seconds, please. It shouldn't take too long. Okay. Please work. Yeah, that's the way. Whoa, bingo. So it does not like me. Okay. Then I will do this without the keyboard because I think the MIDI driver is what causes these problems. Please. Okay, so first let me show you how MIDI data looks like. I hope I have enough screen resolution here, but it's pretty hard to zoom in. So this is what MIDI data looks like. This is the piano from the lowest key to the highest key. These are the events. The beginning is the note on event, the ending is the note off, so we clearly see the duration of the notes. Here are the velocities of the notes that I've recorded, okay? So let me play just this thing. Oh, how can I do that without having enough screen here? This is actually just a drum MIDI. So you can see they're played like C note for the bass drum, D note for the snare. This is the hi-hat, F sharp. So this is what it sounds like. And it sounds like that because I use a software synthesizer. It's called Contact. And it has real wave sounds recorded from the drums, okay? So we can check here. Hopefully it won't crash as it does with the keyboard. So these are the sounds, okay? They're actually recorded. So it sounds quite as a natural drum beat. let's see another thing. This is the bass. Solo the bass. Okay, now let's see the organ here. Ah, got it. This is how chords are. Okay, so how did I record this? I used the grand piano, the Yamaha. Those who have been to the recording studios, I plugged in the MIDI. I plugged in the MIDI in of the adapter to the MIDI out of the keyboard. Okay. Into the PC on the USB, hit the record button, assign these sounds so that I can listen in real time, and recorded these parts. First the drums, then the bass, and then the organ. So this is what I ended up with. Now it sounds like a relatively cheap band because I'm not a piano player, but it still has realistic sounds, right? It's not as bad as Microsoft Wavetable Synth or whatever. So I would like to try this again in another file, MIDI, let's say test. Test 2 then. Hopefully it won't go bad on me again. Okay. Now, where's my browser? So I will insert. I have already the MIDI connection. You can see the green lights there are the velocities that I press the keys. Okay. Then I add the sound module or the synthesizer. And I have here a lot of instruments. By the way, for your knowledge, so this collection of instruments, it has some choir, some band instruments, organ, guitar, bass. It's like 20 gigabytes, something like that, 20, 25 gigabytes. So there are a lot of wave sounds here. Let's bring up a simple acoustic piano, grand piano. Well, this sounds very bad. This is not a good piano. So let's see a couple of nice things that we can do with MIDI now. I will hit record. And I will try to play something. Oh, I just got some notes wrong there. So let's see what we can do about it. I need more screen space. Come here. Okay, now let's listen to this and see what it went wrong here. Oh, yeah? Thank you. Why can't I hear the sound? Ah, sorry, my bad. Okay. Good. So now let's see what went bad here. Start from this point. Sounds good. Sounds good. Oh, there was a note that I didn't want to. Here, this tiny little, I don't think I want that. Let me remove it. Much better. Huh? Sounds like I really know to play piano. And then, oh God, what was that? Like, now I need to clean this up. So this note wasn't here, this note wasn't in my performance, and this note as well. I removed something useful. I don't know which one was actually useful there, so. No, this one wasn't. Yeah, it was the tiny little one. So I can do that. Then I can select all these notes. Anybody here who plays piano? A couple of them. Now, I'm a guitar player. I don't quite know how to play piano. So I've kind of mapped my way around the C major scale. But it's very hard for me to play other scales because they have other shapes. So what I will do, I will record these things, select all the notes here, and just, please let me move all of these. Like that. So I play in another key. Okay, so I can do that. This is in another key, right? And Professor, do I have time for a quick short, another example? It's 38. Okay, then I will give you another small example. I will delete this. I will change my instrument to drums. Let's see, band, drum kits, pop kit. Oh. Okay. A couple of adjustments here. Okay. So now I'll pick a metronome with one counting measure. Playback on the recording, use audio metronome, apply. Okay, so now I try to record some drums at this tempo. And maybe I don't get them right. Let's see. Okay, it's tough to play wrong. Do you like this? Oh, I do because I played it. So what can I do? I can use a plugin that automatically moves my notes. I don't even need to move them manually. This is called quantization. So we can move all the notes. This is the strength, like how hard it pulls from the notes. The resolution, where do I want those beats to fall? And it's a quarter note. No, it's a 16th note. Sorry. Okay. So now let's see how it sounds. So it sounds quite like a drum beat. And I played so poorly, but I just moved the notes around, okay? So think again when you're listening to an artist, because he has all these thingies. Don't say that he's a great musician until you are listening to a live performance, okay? Which does not use recorded sounds or MacBooks. Okay, so basically that's all I wanted to say. If you have further questions, because I forgot to give you my email address maybe regarding music or MIDI, just take a picture of this slide or note down my email address if you want to ask me further questions. So that will be all for Introduction to MIDI. I really hope you understood what it is, and I don't know, maybe enjoy using it. So thank you.